whole town's batting about Cincinnati. What a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.
Hello, Reds fans, and welcome to another edition of We Love Our Team. I'm Jack Greiner, and along with my co-host Randy Freaking, we are pleased today to welcome Jim Breech. Jim played in the National Football League for the Oakland Raiders in 1979, but he's known as a Bengal for whom he played from 1980 to 1992. Jim played college football for the California Golden Bears. He was notable among kickers for wearing a different size cleat on his kicking foot. He wore a smaller size 5 cleat on his right kicking foot. His normal size was a 7, which he felt gave him more control and stability kicking the football. We may talk about this a little bit in the podcast. In his 14 NFL seasons, Jim made 243 of 340 field goals. That's over 70%. 517 of 539 extra points. That's about 96%. And scored 1,246 total points. His 1,151 points with the Bengals are a franchise record. He is second all-time scoring in consecutive games with 186 consecutive games. He was a perfect 9 for 9 in overtime field goals, an NFL record. Jim played in 9 postseason games during his career. In all of them combined, he missed just 2 field goals out of 11 attempts and never missed an extra point. Jim also played in Super Bowl 16 and Super Bowl 23, was perfect in both games, not missing a field goal or extra point in either one. In Super Bowl 23, he kicked 3 field goals and scored 10 of Cincinnati, 16 points in the game. Probably would have been MVP had it not been for a couple of guys named Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. Jim, welcome to We Love Our Team. We're really happy to have you here.
Thanks, Jack. I'm happy to be here. It's always fun to talk about the Reds and the Bengals. So appreciate it, Randy. Good to see you too.
Thank you. Hey, so Jim, we'll talk a little bit football today, but how about where you grew up and a baseball team that you rooted for when you were a kid?
So I grew up in Sacramento, California. And side note, I played Winter League baseball with Vic Baker, Dusty Baker's brother, and Randy Lurch, who pitched for the Phillies, was on that team. So it was kind of fun. I only played a few games, then I had to go to football. But we had a lot of great baseball growing up in Sacramento, and a lot of guys that come out of Sacramento and play in the majors. But I grew up there. I rooted for the San Francisco Giants. That was my team and then the A's came. And I'm not one of these guys. If you're a New York guy, you're either the Giants, Jets, the Mets, or the Yankees. No, I rooted for both teams. I was a Giants fan because they were there first, and I didn't remember them as a kid. I grew up, I was born in 56, so I didn't remember them not being there. And then the A's came in 68, so I rooted for them also. So if I had a choice, the Giants were my team first. But I certainly rooted for the A's big time. And when they won their 3 championships in a row, I was in high school, and it was pretty cool, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. So, Jim, you probably only 6 years old in 1962. Do you have any memory of that World Series at all?
I don't know if I have memories of it or if it's just stuff I've heard about or read, and I can't differentiate there. It's hard to remember. I just know Willie Mays hit a line drive that was going to go to the fence, and Bobby Richardson jumped up and caught it, and that was the end of the game. And then from then on, like the Dodgers winning this year, couldn't care less. I was rooting for the Yankees because I think we were second to the Dodgers like 9 years or 9 out of 11 years during that period. Hated the Dodgers, and it's hard for me to get past it today, So it'd be like being a Bengal fan and trying to root for the Steelers, and couldn't do it.
Can't happen. It's funny, you talk about that because maybe because of the 1976 World Series, or I don't know, but with the Yankees, I have such a hard time rooting for the Yankees, but I had a brother-in-law who passed away, and he was a huge Yankees fan, grew up in New Jersey, And so I kind of feel this tug to pull for the Yankees, and I just watching them, I can't do it. I just can't. Like watching that fifth inning the other night, I was like, "Ha ha, Yankees!" So it was.
That was unbelievably amazing. How bad that was.
Oh my God! I mean, I still can't believe I'm watching it. And what was, I mean, I feel so bad for Garrett Cole because, I mean, he gets the bases loaded, no outs, he strikes two guys out, and then that routine ground ball, and he doesn't get over to cover Furr, or Rizzo doesn't charge it, or I mean, it's crazy.
I think two things happen. One, how many times do you think Garrett Cole has practiced that, done that this year? Hundreds? I mean, training camp, they do it how many times? Or spring training.
Yeah.
And in games, they do it every time the ball's hit to the right side. The first reaction by the pitcher is to go to first base. And he's decided he's going to the dugout already. And then Rizzo, I can't blame Rizzo. The way that ball came off, I guarantee it had side spin. It was spinning so fast, he had to make sure because that ball could have just shot sideways on him. So he waited because he knew Cole's going to be there, right? Going to have it. He'll just toss it. Nope, didn't happen.
Nope.
So
I did point out, to our trivia group, I should mention Jim and Randy are both members of the daily trivia question email chain that goes around. But I mentioned to the group that I didn't even think about it until yesterday, the day after the game, that, Mookie Wilson hit that ground ball that went under Buckner's legs in the '86 World Series. And now Mookie Betts hits the ground ball that unleashes the gates for the Dodgers. So I don't know, something about the name Mookie,
Probably the only two Mookies that have ever played in Major League Baseball, too.
Yeah, right. So,
hey, Jim, who's better, Willie Mays or Aaron Boone?
Willie Mays or Aaron Boone? Or Aaron Judge?
Aaron Boone or
Aaron Judge. I'm sorry, Aaron Judge.
I got to go with Willie Mays over Aaron Boone. I love Aaron Boone, bro.
Yeah, that caught me. He did hit a knuckleball into the seats, and that was big for New York. To me, Willie Mays is the greatest player that's ever played. So, anybody that goes after that, is a step down. Aaron Judge, though, it's just amazing what he does. 6'7", play really. That error he had was the first error he's ever had playing center field the other night.
Really?
And the guy he's a phenomenal player. And it's a different time. I mean, although he did have a really nice season with batting average, it's just hard to get past all the guys' strikeouts. They strike out so much in this day and age. And I guess I'm a little old school that way. I like to see the ball put in play. But all he does is phenomenal. But if you look at his numbers, Mays put up numbers like that, played center field like nobody's ever played it. And the panache that he played with, the basket catch, and just he was so cool. And I loved watching Willie Mays, and got to see him in person a bunch of times. See him wasn't on TV very much. He got a game of the week, right?
Right.
But I listened to him every night, falling asleep, listening to a Giants game or an A's game.
That's awesome. There's a great documentary about Willie Mays on HBO. I think it's on HBO now, Max. I don't know if you saw it, Jim, but I'd recommend it if you get a chance. I think you'd really enjoy it. It was great. And I tell my kids, it's like the numbers only tell part of the story because he played in probably two of the hardest places to hit home runs. The Polo Grounds when he first came up, and then Candlestick Park. So I think if he had played in Yankee Stadium, my God, I think he would have passed Babe Ruth pretty easily.
It's interesting. I went to Candlestick Park many times before they enclosed it. When it was wide open in right field, there were just bleachers out there. And when Willie McCovey would come up, all the kids would come out of the bleachers and go stand out there because there was a big open cement space, and they'd wait for him to hit a home run, and they'd go fight for the ball. But I don't know how many times I saw Mays hit a ball to left field that looked like it was going out and just get knocked down. Literally like somebody shot it out of the air. And Hank Aaron, I read something Hank Aaron said a while back, says, if I'd played in Candlestick, I wouldn't have had anywhere near what I had. He goes, there's no way, Willie Mays played someplace else besides Candlestick, he'd be holding this record now. And I believe that.
Yeah.
What position did you play, Jim?
The coldest
Pardon?
winter he ever spent was June in San Francisco, I think, or something like that.
Mark Twain was a summer, and the coldest winter was a summer in San Francisco. That's very true.
Jim, what position did you play as a ball player when you were?
I was infield, played middle infield, played a little bit. Actually, I played everywhere. I think I played every position at some point in time. Little League, I pitched and caught, played short, played third. In Legion Ball, I played all over. Played 1 year at Cal. I played center field there. So played all over the place. I would have been good for today's era as far as playing multiple positions, but just played wherever needed.
Did you play soccer as a kid?
No soccer. I didn't have soccer around at the time, and the only reason I became a kicker was I watched these guys kick, these soccer style kickers, and I thought it was a pretty cool way of kicking. So I just tried to emulate what they did. Really, is how I got to it.
Who was really I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm genuinely curious. Who kind of was the first soccer style kicker in the NFL?
The Gogolak brothers.
Oh,
Pete and Charlie
I remember that
Gogolak. And I don't know if it's Pete or Charlie, maybe Pete, is still the all-time leading scorer for the New York Giants.
Huh.
At like a little over 500 points, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. That's, 5 or 6 years, just playing 5 or 6 years. So they've struggled in a lot of areas. The Gogolaks were the first ones. Then Stenerud came along in Upremian. And I saw Stenerud at Hughes Stadium in Sacramento in the Camellia Bowl in 1966. And I read everything I could about him, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. This soccer style kicking is pretty cool.
Huh.
So I tried to do what I saw.
Yeah. Was Horst Muhlman did he kick soccer style?
So what happened with those guys, Hank Stram, because he had Stenerud, Hank Stram sent scouts over to Europe and brought back Horst Muhlman, Tony Frisch. There were a few guys that ended up kicking in the league for a number of years. Brought them back. They were European soccer players. And that's where Aikiki touchdown come from, because most of them didn't speak much English, didn't know the game, but they could kick a football. They could kick pretty well. And that's where it started off, putting our kickers in we're kind of head cases anyway, most of the time people think so.
For our younger listeners, Horst Muhlman was a longtime kicker for the Bengals. I guess he wasn't your immediate predecessor, was he?
No, Chris Barr
Barr
replaced him, and then I came in '80 after Chris got cut in Cincinnati. I was in Oakland. I remember telling my wife, my days are numbered. It's not going to happen here. Chris Barr is released, and the Raiders loved him, and I knew the Raiders from historically. If somebody was out there that I knew they wanted, and I knew they wanted Chris Barr coming out of the draft, and they were going to wait another round to get him, and they didn't because the Bengals got him. So I knew my days were numbered. And I just ended up, 13 weeks later kicking in Cincinnati, and so it worked out for both of us.
Yeah. I heard Horst Muhlman liked to drink beer. I think that there's some stories about Horst Muhlman out there.
Yes. Tom Gray had some great stories about Tommy, bud time. He'd come in after practice and they'd throw down, he'd throw down 2 or 3 or 6 or 7. So, yeah. But I think that's pretty typical. The whole German population, they can drink some beer, but he loved to drink his beer.
That's great.
Hey, Jim, you mentioned the A's 3 consecutive championships, 72, 73, 74. They beat the Reds in 72. And yet the Reds only won 2 world championships in the 70s. And most people refer to the Reds as the team of the 70s, even though they technically lost 3-2 to the A's in terms of the number of World Series. So what do you think about the Reds being the team of the 70s as opposed to the A's?
So, yeah, I think the A's are the team of the 70 to 75. How's that? Because what they did after 75 was an abomination. Charles O'Finley tried to sell off everybody they had. And it's just, I can't give him that designation because after 75, they were a shell of themselves. It was kind of like what Florida did for those 2 championships. They bring in team, win, and then they get rid of everybody. And so, yeah, it was, I would have to give it to the Reds because they were much more consistent through the 70s. Although those 3 were pretty, and having beaten the Reds during that time was kind of a big deal, if you look back. But Charles O'Finley, he had all these innovative ideas like colored bases and have the rabbit come out of the ground with the baseballs and, the shoes and the color, the uniforms, all kind of unique and different. But I can tell you that how many times in those 3 years do you think they drew 1 million, not 2 million, 1 million people in those 3 years that they won? How many do you think?
Yeah.
One.
Wow.
One time, the last one. So it took 3 years of championships just to get to where 1 million people.
Unbelievable.
In 81 games, that's not a lot of people. And by the end of the 70s, I did a little research last night after I got your email or text, I guess in this case. They had a game where they drew 653 people in like 78 or 79. Wow. I remember a game. You'd go to a game, they had 1 gate open, 1 gate. And, they have like 900 people. You'd all go through the same gate.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that crazy?
You all got to know each other. Although they got to know each other. Yeah, we were talking about the 72 World Series, and I went to a couple games, and I was, like, who are these guys? And, Jim, you were saying that because they played on the West Coast, you didn't hear as much about them, right? I mean.
Yeah. I think since I live on the Eastern time now, and when you live there, you don't think about it, but it is harder to follow those teams when they're playing at 10:30 at night. And I think people didn't really know too much about the A's. There weren't a ton of games on TV, and they certainly weren't one they're going to attract a huge audience. So they kind of were young, talented, but very quiet. Nobody really knew too much about the A's, except that they, had a pretty good record. But beyond that, you really hadn't seen them.
There's a lawyer in town named Marty Butler, and before he went to law school, he worked for the Reds. And he was working for the Reds in 72. And one of his jobs was late in the regular season, he flew out to Oakland with the most primitive VCR equipment there was and videotaped local A's broadcast. And that's how the Reds scouted the A's.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sparky tells this great story about the game out. The Reds won 2 out of 3 out in Oakland, and the game they lost was, I think, like 1-0 or so. It was a real close. Well, there are a lot of low-scoring games, but I think it wasn't some guy for the A's, a Hispanic player, not a starter, but he comes up. And Ray Shore, who was like the Reds super scout, had prepared this very detailed scouting report. And it said, when this guy comes up, play him up the middle. He hits up the middle. So Concepcion should basically be playing behind second. They go out to the mound to talk it over. Concepcion convinces Sparky that he's played against this guy in winter ball. He's a pull hitter. So instead of playing up the middle, Concepcion plays over towards third. Guy hits the ball right up the middle, right where Ray Shore told Sparky to play Concepcion. That was the winning run. And apparently after the game, Ray Shore just came down to the clubhouse and threw the scouting report at Sparky. He said, well, if you're not going to pay attention to this, why should I bother doing it? And Sparky blames himself for losing the 72 World Series because he.
Wow.
Hey, Jim, do you remember Crazy George? Crazy George is the guy, for our younger listeners, he is credited with inventing the wave. And so the A's had very low attendance in the early 70s.
Right.
But I think they started coming back for some reason, late 70s and then early 80s. Billy Martin came there, but Crazy George was kind of a cheerleader for the A's, and he invented the wave, I think, in 1978.
That sounds about right. Because I know there's a bunch of places that kind of claim it, but I do remember it happening in Oakland way earlier than it was happening anywhere else. I didn't remember it being Crazy George, but yeah, I can see that happening because I remember it was when it was going down at the time, and everybody's like, "Wow, this thing's pretty cool."
Of course, with only 900 people, that's not much of a wave. But
Yeah. It was kind of a slow cresting.
Yeah, that's right. They're talking about Finley. One interesting thing about him was he did have a lot of innovative ideas, some of which are kind of in place now. But when he was adamantly against free agency, obviously, because he didn't want to lose his guys. But he was advocating when it came in and it was inevitable, and Peter Seitz made his decision in the arbitration. Finley said, "Okay, let them all be free agents every year. Send everybody to a 1-year contract, make everybody a free agent. It'll depress the market, and we'll actually wind up saving money." And Marvin Miller was terrified that the other owners would actually do that, because he was like, "Yeah, that actually would be pretty smart." So when the owners insisted on having guys be bound to their team for 6 years or whatever, Marvin Miller was like, "Yeah, we can definitely do that." But it was in Finley kind of knew the way to really do it from a pure economic basis was just open it up. So
I don't see the Players Association going for that at all. So that wasn't going to happen.
Right. Well, Marvin Miller knew better, So it was kind of
that's why they have such a strong union, is because of Marvin Miller.
Yeah. Yeah, they never. I mean, it's interesting because the NFL Players Association, I just don't think has ever been able to really assert themselves. I guess when was it was 82 was the big strike, right, with NFL?
We had two of them, 82 and 87. Out of 87 came free agency, and 82. Trying to think, there was something. Severance pay came out of 82. There was a lot. We were way behind. And I think just because of the nature of our game and the injuries and stuff, it was more difficult because it was kind of unwieldy because you got 50-something players versus smaller rosters, and we're just now getting to the point where I think the union's doing a pretty good job now. There was a while there for the old guys particularly, and we were just left in the wake.
Yeah. That's really too bad. So I'm just curious who was your guy on the A's? Was there a guy that was like your kind of your guy?
I liked Reggie. I would say I was kind of a Sal Bando fan. Really like Sal Bando.
Yeah.
I like Joe Rudy. I like those guys.
They were a great team. I mean, it really was.
Who didn't love Campy Campaneris? I remember seeing they played the Tigers, and the pitcher threw over 13 consecutive times. And I don't think anybody booed once.
I thought you were going to tell the story about Campaneris throwing the bat.
No, I don't remember that.
I think that was against the Tigers. I think somebody came up and in on Campaneris, and he got up and chucked the bat at the pitcher. Yeah. So look it up on YouTube. It was pretty wild.
Hey, Jim, hey, Jim, you were in 2 Super Bowls. You played under Forrest, Gregg, and Sam Wyche. Forrest in the first one, Sam in the second one. Can you compare and contrast the coaching styles of Forrest Gregg and Sam Wyche?
Yeah, they're about as opposite as you can possibly get. Forrest was in your face, tough, I remember going to training camp in 81. He came in 80. I wasn't there in training camp in 80, but I came at the end of the year. And that training camp, our 7:00 meeting, we never got anything positive said, ever. I mean, it was like, this is the worst practice ever. And you got, it was all negative. But the one thing about Forrest is if you had any complaint, if you didn't like something, you could take it to him and you could hash it out. You could get in a shouting match. Heck, There might have been guys go to fisticuffs with him. I don't know. But when you left that room, it was done. He never brought it back up. He was the fairest coach I think I've ever played for. Guys, except for Kenny Anderson, around his getting his head almost twisted off. Some other issues came over that and how much when he was able to play. But beyond that, I would say everybody would have said, I'll go play for Forrest anywhere. He was tough and fair. And that's all you really want, right? I mean, get you to be the best you can be, but treat me fairly. Don't just knock me down constantly all the time. So I remember on the sideline, my first season, I was struggling. I got off to a bad start. I think my first 5-6 games, I hit the right upright like 5 times. And we're in New York, and I'm standing on the sideline, and he comes up, he goes, "We believe in you. You're our guy." And it's like, wow, that was huge right then. Mm-hmm. You know, I went on, tied for the AFC lead in scoring that year, and obviously we go to the Super Bowl. But he, I don't know if kickers in his era, I mean, just dealing with a kicker probably was beyond his realm. I mean, what do you do with these guys? I mean, are they really football players?
So I heard
he handled it really well. And he's just, I love Forrest Gregg.
I heard he had a kind of a soft spot for Pat McInerney, the punter, who was kind of a character.
McInerney?
Or McInerney. I mean, McInerney, yeah.
Shoot. That goes back to 1980. We're playing Cleveland, last game of the year. Pat is also a wide receiver, really good wide receiver. Mm-hmm. He's running a slant, and Tom Darden catches him literally right under the chin. He goes back, his head hits before anything else hits. He's out on the field. We don't know if he's dead. I mean, that's how serious it was. I don't think they brought a stretcher out. I mean, they should have put his head down, secured his head, and no, that stuff didn't happen. They take him inside. They do some X-rays. So we go to halftime. Second half, next thing you know, here comes Pat carrying his gear, walking out from the river end. He comes walking up. He goes up to Forrest. He goes, "Coach, I'm okay." Forrest says, "Are you going to play?" He goes, "Well, I've got some torn muscles in my neck and stuff." And Pat, "Are you going to play?" "Yeah, I'm going to play." So he goes out. Jack Thompson was playing for us. Kenny was out he'd gotten hurt earlier. Jack had played that game. So late in the game, he throws a long pass down the left sideline to McInerney. Pat, it's a little short. He catches it kind of falling back as he's sliding on his shoulder pad, like right here. And the defender rolls under him. And he kind of rolls on top of the defender into the end zone for a touchdown. From then on, Pat McInerney couldn't do wrong. I mean, Forrest Gregg loved that toughness. And, you know, it was stupid. If you think back that they didn't attach him to a stretcher and that he even came back on the field and the chance that he actually played. But there was also, if things were going a little shaky in training camp, he'd go to Pat. He goes, "Hey, Pat, do something. Let's, stir things up a little bit." And one time Pat comes in and he starts singing a song. "Oh, I'm glad to be a Bengal. Yes, I am. I'm so glad to be a roll call." And he had words and stuff all the way through. But the greatest ever, you guys may have heard this. Chris Collinsworth told this story on Jay Leno, where if you were 15 minutes early, you were probably right on time, right? So it's like 6:55, and we start at 7, and McInerney's not in his seat yet. And he'd been dragging around this little duck, quack, 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 and it, all around campus. Who knows why? So nobody knows where McInerney is. "Where's McInerney?" "Coach, we don't know." And we see some feet go by because we're in a lower level, so we can see the sidewalk. We see some feet go by, so we know he's coming. Comes down the hall, and you hear him coming down the hall, this quack, 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 coming down the hall. It's reverberating, right? He comes walking in. He is wearing a cutoff T-shirt and game socks, and that's it. That's all he has on. And Forrest looks over. He does like a double, triple take, and he starts laughing. Pat never. I mean, he just walked in, didn't smile, nothing, didn't even acknowledge Forrest. He goes and sits down. He puts his hands down, and we're dying, right? We're dying. And Forrest is looking, and he looks at him. And a little side note: the night before was our rookie party. Be respectful of the dorms. Don't do anything. The dorms got trashed. They got trashed. It was terrible. And we were going to get killed. We were going to get killed because we had that day off, and the next day was going to be terrible. So Forrest, he says, last night, and he looks at Pat again, and Pat's just sitting there, and he sees him sitting there naked as a jaybird. He starts laughing so hard. He literally he's crying. He falls on the ground. He finally gets himself together. He stands up. He goes, Pat McAnally just saved your asses. Get out of here.
That's great.
So the story I heard that I loved was Gregg one time told the Bengals they had to start acting like professionals and they had to dress the part.
Oh, can I tell you that story?
Yeah, tell that story.
Okay. So we fly Piedmont Airlines, and we're going to New York, trying to act like professionals. But Pat wore this coat with the leather sleeves, like the Harvard professor or something. And, he's from Harvard, and he's got the tweed coat and everything. That's what he wore every trip. So Pat wants to upgrade his wardrobe a little bit. So he goes to Joni Ross, Dan Ross's wife, or he goes to Dan. Dan, can Joni, on one of these Tuesdays, do you mind if Joni goes out with me and helps me find a couple suits? I want to upgrade my outfit a little bit, my style. He goes, sure. So I go out, and so we're going to New York. He shows up in this 3-piece suit that's like sharp. Dude, that is nice. We go to New York and we get our butts kicked. We come back next morning. We're at practice. We're in team meeting, and Forrest is like, "You guys go to New York. I can't believe it. You go the limelight, the big city, and you can't handle it." And then he looks over at McAnally, and you, McAnally, and you. Yeah, you got your nice 3-piece suit as he's looking. You got a nice 3-piece suit you wear. What happened to your Piedmont jacket, McAnally? Where's your Piedmont jacket? Is that too good for you? You can't wear your Piedmont jacket? Oh, my gosh. We were dying. So, end of the week, we're playing a home game, so we always practice at Riverfront. On Friday, McAnally's not. We're getting ready to stretch out and everything, and there's no McAnally. Next thing you know, the river end, here comes a stretched limo pulling into the inside, pulls into the end zone. Guy gets out, opens the door, top hat, tails, the whole works. Pat McAnally steps out, tips his hat to Forrest. He's even got a cane. I mean, it was classic. And then he goes and opens the trunk, pulls out his stuff, changes, and gets... He was classic. He had, oh my gosh, Pat was amazing.
That's great. That's just, yeah. I heard Forrest Gregg tell that story. He just clearly, appreciated but it sounds like you got to have a class clown, right? You got to have a class clown.
Yeah, I'm one who's brilliant. He's a genius level class clown.
No doubt. So what about Wyche? How was the experience with Sam Wyche?
Sam was good. Sam approached it a lot differently. He more of the mental side. He played a little bit of mental games with guys, and he was just when it came to offense, he was just a genius. And he approached things a lot. He wasn't nearly as like when he went crazy trying to yell at you. You kind of laughed because that wasn't really him. So he was just brilliant in his own way. I mean, Forrest was. You always knew where you stood with Forrest. With Sam, you didn't always know where you stood, but because of how good he was with the offense, it was brilliant. So, in their own way, they got a lot out of us. I mean, obviously we were talented teams, And even I don't even know, are 281 and 88 teams. I know that Randy, that was one of the questions there. Which one? I don't know, because I think they were very similar teams. You got an MVP quarterback on both teams. You've got great running backs. The 88 team might have been a little bit more versatile because of James Brooks. Wide receivers on both teams were phenomenal. The tight ends were great. DB, our defenses were similar and really good. I don't know. Maybe those teams would have come down to a field goal. I don't know.
Boomer could run that play action, though. I'll tell you what, man. When
Unbelievable.
He was so good at hiding the ball, and I just remember some plays where, Eddie Brown was just wide open because the safety.
Washington. 80 yards. He'd get way down and protect that ball, and they had no idea where it was. The next thing you know, Eddie's 10 yards ahead of his defender, and he walks into the end zone. Yeah, it was. You don't see it as well today. The guys don't do as good a job of it. I don't think they carry it out quite as well.
Yeah.
But when it's done well, it's really hard. I mean, not only do you have a bunch of big guys in front of you trying to keep you from seeing, now you don't even know where the ball went. It's tough. It's tough to follow.
No doubt. So you've been part of the Cincinnati community for over 40 years. Have you become a Reds fan in that time, Jim?
Well, I have. I had a chance. Some of the Reds used to come to our Bible studies on Thursdays if they were off or something. So I've gotten to know George Foster pretty well. Tom Browning, I've played a fair amount of golf with over the years and became a good friend. I remember, I was living over in Anderson, and his perfect game. Forgot I had, we have school the next morning, and I forgot there's no milk in the house, so I run over to Maristop. It was the only place still open. They were open until like midnight. And I think the game went. It was delayed.
Yeah.
So it's like 11 o'clock. I'm sitting out in the parking lot. He's going into the ninth inning. I can't go in until this thing is over. So I sat out in the car waiting to see what would happen with that ninth inning. So yeah, that was a great memory of him doing that. And this whole Mr. Perfect thing, he's like, I wish they'd stop doing that.
Yeah.
Who'd you root for in 1990?
I was over the Reds. I was all over the Reds.
Okay.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the second game, when Billy Bates gets the dribbler, gets on first, and then I don't know if how he got the second. I'm not sure if he got bunted over. And then Oliver hits the bouncer down the third base line. Billy Bates comes in. Oh, man, it was huge. Yeah. And one of my sons, who was born in Oakland, a couple of my kids were born in Oakland, and he was rooting for the A's. And he was a little disappointed, only because he was born there. I don't think he really was rooting. He was happy that the Reds won. But a sweep, that was amazing with the Bash brothers and everything that they had. And I think Canseco hit one out at right field. Maybe it was only hit in the whole series with that shot to right field in that game. So it was amazing. That whole thing was amazing.
I mean, what a year. What a year. Yeah, coming right off of the Bengals Super Bowl appearance, right? Because I think the Bengals.
Yeah, not too far up. Yeah, 89, January of 89 we were in. And then 90 we went to the playoffs. And then they go and have that great season. So it was looking good right then.
Yeah.
How about current Reds? Do you have some favorite current Reds?
It's kind of hard not to watch Ellie De La Cruz, isn't it? I mean, the guy's like a magnet. The things he does everything huge. It's just big. I mean, he strikes out big, and he when he runs, it's just unbelievable watching him. When he hits home runs, they go 9 miles, and some of the plays he makes in the field. And it's hard to believe he's still 22. Has he even turned 23 yet?
Yeah.
So I love watching him. I love Spencer Steer's approach at the plate. I love watching Abbott pitch. I like the pitchers. I just wish they could throw a few more innings. Hunter Green, the way he came on this year and settled in, and he was almost like Homer Bailey there for a while. We'd have throw a 2-hitter and then give up 6 the next game and go back and forth. And then toward this last season, I mean, he was a true ace. It was unbelievable. It was so great to see that growth he had. He's fun to watch. And Matt McClain, I mean, I just hope he can stay healthy. I mean, you have 2 obliques. I worry that that's something that they got to worry about over time. TJ Friedel, how can you not love TJ Friedel and the way he plays the game? And he's got to stay healthy. I'd love to see Marte and CES get their act together, and it's tough. I mean, young guys coming along, and hopefully this time in the Arizona Fall League would help them, just feel comfortable. I mean, like Marte he misses 80 games, and they kind of just throw him in there.
Yeah.
Then CES had the injury, so I'd like to see some of that. These guys start to put it together with a new manager. It could be kind of fun if these. It's funny. The Dodgers win with 7 of their starting pitchers not pitching, which is kind of scary, right?
Yeah,
if you think about it. I mean, they still won the thing, and we're by far the better team. I don't know. I'm excited to see where things go with the Reds. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on, and you got to stay healthy. These pitchers have to stay healthy, and I think they have a chance to be very, very, very competitive.
Hey, Jack, that's our sign for maybe something new today, a little number association with the Reds and Bengals.
I want to ask Jim one question going back, a little old school Reds, and I want to know, Jim, to break down and critique Paul O'Neill's kicking technique when he kicked that ball in from right field. I mean, just what did he do right? What did he do wrong?
Well, what a great guy, and talk about played with. He showed his emotions, right? And they loved New York. He's a hero in New York, and what a great player. I thought it was pretty good, actually. I think the more amazing thing is the guy never tried to go home. The guy stayed on third even when he kicked it. I mean, come on. If you're looking, he kicked the ball. Run home. They had so much. They were so worried about his arm that they weren't going anywhere. So that was hilarious. I mean, what he dribbled about 2 or 3 times, he said, just heck with it, I'm going to kick it.
I'm kicking it.
That was funny. And
I watched that live. I watched it on TV live, and I just was like, wait a minute, what did he just do?
Hey, Jack, can you remind our younger audience? I'm kind of struggling myself. I remember seeing it, but I can't identify the year or the context.
It was not 90. It was 91 or 92, and they were playing. I think they were playing the Phillies for some reason. It sticks in my mind. And somebody hits a ball out to right, and O'Neill is having trouble picking it up, and he I shouldn't say he boots it until he booted it, but he's just having trouble picking it up, and it just out of frustration, he just kicks it, and it got to first base. I mean, it got all the way into first base, and I mean, he really had a follow through. I remember like his leg followed through.
Oh yeah, it's funny. We never talked about that. I played golf with him a few times, and we never talked about it.
Look it up on YouTube. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube for our younger listeners. But it was hilarious. I mean,
it was pretty funny. I can only imagine what
Pinella was still the manager. I don't think he thought it was that hilarious.
Yeah, I wondered that conversation was like in the dugout. What are you doing? I don't know.
Right,
I see you throw the bases. I just thought I'd do something different too.
Right.
Okay, Randy, fire off.
Yeah, let's do some number association, Jim. I'll give you the number and the name of a famous Red, and you give us the corresponding number of a Bengal that either is your favorite player or who you think is the greatest player. So I'm going to start off with number 1, the manager of the Reds back in the 60s, who tragically died from cancer. Number 1, Fred Hutchinson, number 1 on the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, there's actually only been number one, I think, and that's Jamar Chase, which is a pretty good number 1. We didn't even have single digits until 1984. When Boomer Esiason came in, we only had double digits. Although initially they must have, because I do know that there was somebody else that wore some single digits like their first year or two. And for some reason, Green Bay and Cincinnati were the only 2 teams that didn't have double digits or single digits. And then the Bengals did with Boomer coming in as part of his contract. That's how I got number 3. I said, if you ever go single digits, I want number 3 if possible. So that's how I got 3. But Jamar Chase, I mean, I don't care who else wears number one. It's going to be hard to beat him.
Well, you mentioned Tom.
Why'd you want number 3, Jim?
Well, my hero was Jan Stenerud growing up, and he wore number 3, and that's a pretty common number for kickers. You get 3 points for a field goal,
right?
But it was because of Jan Stenerud. Very cool. There was a card they called the Idol card that came out one year, and it had both of us kicking, and him with me, and then him kind of in the background kicking also. Very cool card, and I've told Jan it's one of my favorite cards that I've ever had. And he's just a class guy, so it's great to I've gotten to know him over the years. And that's why I wore number 3.
And I think the greatest number 3 on the Cincinnati Reds was Scooter Gennett, actually.
Maybe that a couple seasons he had were pretty big.
Yeah. How about number 32? You mentioned Tom Browning. Number 32, Tom Browning.
See, that one wasn't on your list. 28 was. 28
How about Rudy Johnson? Would he
Rudy
be a pretty
Johnson,
good number 32?
Cedric Benson wore 32. Stanley Wilson wore 32. Rudy was the guy. I would say of all those, he was probably the guy. It's a pretty common running back number. But Stanley was just he just had a tough life trying to get away from those drugs. But what a great player he was. He would have really helped us in the Super Bowl. I have to go with Rudy on that. If 28 was a number you had mentioned, or 19, Essex Johnson, which I didn't know, and you mentioned that to me, 28 would be Corey Dillon by far. And then 32, I'd go with Rudy.
How about number 10, Sparky Anderson?
I'd have to go with Kevin Huber.
Oh,
I wore
there
10
you
my
go.
first few years, but Kevin wore it for 14 years or something like that. I'd have to go with Kevin. It haven't been a lot of 10s, mostly quarterbacks, but nobody that played, like Joe or Carson or Kenny or, any of the guys that played for a long period of time, or even, Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Randy, how did you leave 14 off of your list?
Well, I don't know how I did that, Jack. So let's go with 14, Pete Rose.
Well, got to be Kenny Anderson, right?
Yeah.
No doubt.
What a great time. I mean, 2 great players were in the same number in the 2 sports in Cincinnati at pretty much the same time. It was pretty cool. Yeah, Kenny's going to be in the Hall of Fame one of these days. I don't know how he's not, actually.
Why was he so far under the radar? I mean, was it just Namath?
I think we are. I think the team is generally. Okay. We have these ups and downs. When we're good, we get some notoriety. But for the most part, we've been kind of middle of the road. And it's just not exciting. Even though, we had those great offenses around Bill Walsh starting his West Coast offense in Cincinnati. So that's pretty much not West Coast, but making it big, obviously, in San Francisco. And I don't know if you know this, but Bill Walsh, when he was teaching the West Coast offense to Joe Montana, Steve Young, every other quarterback he ever worked with, he showed Kenny Anderson film. That's how they learned how to run the West Coast offense. So Kenny, we had an exciting offense. We always were pretty good on offense. I'm not sure. Willie Anderson should be in, and but he played some of the '90s. In the '90s, I think everybody is just like that lost decade, unfortunately. But Kenny will get in eventually.
I'm glad he finally got in. But when you just looked at his numbers, it was just like, what
he's
was
not
the
in though. He's not in.
Didn't Riley get in?
Oh, Riley did. Rattler did. Yeah.
Ken Riley,
Yes.
but it took him a long time, and I don't think he was even alive when he got inducted, which was sad.
not.
But when you look back at, I think he's the 5th
or 6th all time in interceptions.
Yeah.
But the thing that gets me is, I think he made an All-Pro first team and an All-Pro second team, but he never made the Pro Bowl. That's just guys. He's just not getting. Somebody's not. They're just. Guys are ignoring Cincinnati, and then some guys make it that have no business being in it. And Rattler gets left out, even though 2 or 3 times he led the NFL in interceptions or He tied for it at 36 years old. He tied for the lead in interceptions in the league, and they were trying to have him come back and play another year.
Yeah.
He was playing at such a high level.
Great player. So I'm just curious, we were talking about kickers and just the evolution, of baseball. You mentioned Hunter Green, and Hunter goes out there and throws 100 miles an hour, and we sort of just, we kind of take it for granted. And kickers that are getting to 60-yard. I mean, is there a limit? I mean, are we going to see a 70-yard field goal at some point, do you think?
Yes, there will be. Okay. I guarantee these guys are kicking 70-yard field goals now in practice. I've seen guys do that.
Wow.
It needs perfect timing, end of a half, end of a game, something like that to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll absolutely happen. I have no doubt. And I think it's going to happen if not this year, in the next couple of years.
What do you think about the new? Let me ask you about the rule changes in baseball. Do you like them? Do you not like? Are there any you like, any you don't like?
I love the pitch clock. I love that the game moves, and that I don't care what else they do, but that thing was by far the most important. I get I do get the idea that sometimes the pitchers can get fatigued or something. And they were talking about Cole. He was out there, almost 20 minutes, and they were talking on TV. He's like, why doesn't somebody go out just to break this up a little bit, give him a chance to kind of mentally rest? Which made some sense. But beyond that, I love that part of it. The whole shift thing, the only part I like about that is they have to keep their feet on the dirt. So you think about the shift. So if there's a left-handed batter that pulls, so right now the guy's standing right next to second base, right? I mean, he can't be across the base. Last year he would have been like 2 steps over. So it's not that big a difference, except that they can't stand in right field.
Right.
Like guys would play in right field and get everything. Now at least the ball has a chance to get through. So I like that they've kind of condensed that a little bit. I kind of like that they're thinking about going to this thing with the, I don't know, where you can question the call, the pitch. I don't even know what they're calling that. Going to try that next year, and I've been doing the minors. I mean, yeah, I don't want to take the human aspect out of it completely, but sometimes it's like, what is this guy looking at? He sees this, he does this every day. And you know what I wonder sometimes when you see some of these pitches that are like, what are you thinking? What are the other 3 umpires thinking? Right. Especially the guy on second that's doing second base, and he's watching. And is he in his mind thinking, what is he looking at? I guarantee you he is. What are you looking at?
That's right.
And that ball wasn't even close.
That's a good question. What do you think about the NFL kickoff rule?
I think anything to keep the kickoff in is good. The one thing I would change with it is bring the ball out to the 40 with a touchback. If they truly want to increase returns, they're going to have to make it hard on the defense. And bringing that to the 40 would probably get enough. They'd get somebody's attention then. But right now, why would you kick it to Charlie Jones? He just took it 100 yards when the average return is out to the 28-yard line. If you kick it out of the end zone, it's the 30. Those 2 yards are not going to make any difference, but it might protect you from giving up a 100-yard return, which really, in effect, won that game for the Bengals.
Yeah, sure did. Mm-hmm. I kind of miss. I mean, it takes away. I mean, not that it happened often, but just sort of the off chance of an onside kick mid-game. I remember, I think the Steelers in the Super Bowl one year against the Cowboys did that after they scored and they went for an onside kick. So I realize that there's probably no way to do what you're trying to do and allow for an onside kick, but I do miss that just a little bit. Not that it happened that often.
There's surprise onside kicks. I know I'm coaching at Lakota East High School, the kickers, and we'll do some onside kicks, some surprise onside kicks, as many other teams will do at times. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it does bring a different aspect. It's something you have to prepare for. But I would rather I'd rather see the returns than 2 or 3 surprise onside kicks a year.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have to tell them all right, we're doing an onside kick, and you have to do that onside kick type thing.
Right.
That's okay. I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, the way they have it now, we used to just pile everybody on one side, kick it over there, and then they just go blow everybody up, and you had a great chance of covering it. Now you have to limit the guys on either side, and it makes it's like a minuscule amount of returns or get recovered. So
Right.
But I like the fact that they do have returns. I just wish they'd move it out farther, so it makes it like teams really want to kick so the guys can return it.
Incentive.
Love seeing that.
Yeah. So, Jim, how do we get you on the Ring of Honor, man? I want to start a groundswell of support. I think you belong up there. So
no question.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've been told that the original nominees, which I was part of those original nominees, will eventually get in.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about it, because I'm happy for every guy that's gone in, and they're all deserving. So I don't have any qualms about that at all. The concern I have is because we started just a few years ago, Bob Trumpy's got to be closing in on 80. Let's see, who else am I thinking of? Lamar Parrish. He's probably in his mid to late 70s. I'm in my late 60s, and Max Montoya's in his late 60s. We're getting up there. So I'd hate for it to be another Ken Riley type deal where somebody passed away before they're get that recognition.
Yeah.
I think it's a very cool thing. If I could get my name up there, that would be amazing. But I'm really, really happy that they're doing it, and they're doing something along those lines, recognizing the guys that have come before. And it's good. There's good things happening down there. They're heading in the right direction in a lot of areas, when it comes to fan engagement and so forth.
All right. Well, we're going to do what we can.
You need to make that happen, Jack.
I know. We're gonna our massive social media presence, we're going to get a groundswell of support.
So here's one that is frustrating to me. Sacramento, there's a guy that decided there'd never been a Sacramento Hall of Fame. So he's going to do a Sacramento Hall of Fame. And I've been on it for several years. Excuse me. And I haven't gotten in, which is fine. And the guys who've gotten in have been really good. But that's a frustrating one for me. I would love to get in my hometown's Hall of Fame, but literally nobody knows who I am, right? I mean, I haven't lived there for a number of years, and I'm old, and it was more geared toward baseball players, because I'd read their bios and it'd be really long, and then you see a football player, he played, and it'd be like a little thing like this. Come on, TJ, you got to get it, at least make it fair so people have an idea of what we did along the way. So that's fun. It's all fun. It's great that there's guys being acknowledged, and I'm excited for our guys. I know for Corey, that was a big deal. Corey's kind of a misunderstood guy. He's a really good guy with unbelievable intensity that he played with. And that's the one thing you have to understand. If you played for a team that lost every year of your career, literally every year you played, and you're so competitive and winning is so important to you, there's going to be a frustration level. I don't care whether you're getting paid. When it comes down to it, you're not thinking about money when you're on the field. You're playing the game you've been playing since you were a kid. So, did Corey handle everything perfectly? Certainly not. He would acknowledge that. But the other side of it, there's that frustration. Barry Sanders left the game. Calvin Johnson left. And I guarantee you the fact that they didn't win played a huge part in that. Mm-hmm. Carson Palmer left here because he didn't feel like the team was willing to do whatever it took to win. So winning is a big deal for guys. And heck, we would play flag football games or basketball games, Bengal basketball games. And if it got close at all, the intensity level on our guys would you could just see it shoot right up. Because, we're not losing this game. We are not losing this game. And then it just comes out, So just competitive. We're
Yeah,
all
they
really
said
competitive.
They said the ping pong games down at Paycor get pretty competitive now.
I bet. I mean, I used to play Louis Breeden and Samoa in Wilmington. We had some knockdown drag-out matches. It was a blast playing those guys. I imagine they'd be really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, well, Jim, thank you for your time. We've taken up quite a bit of it, and this has just been really fun and some great stories. And as I say, I do want to be at the game when they get your name up there in the Ring of Honor, because it's just so well deserved. And you're a great part of our community, and it's very nice of you to be here with us today.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks,
Always enjoy,
Jim.
especially love talking baseball.
All right.
Well, the studio audience to respond. Okay. Okay, folks.
All right.
Give it up.
There we go.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Much
Have a good one.
appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Whoop.
About Cincinnati, what a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.